When you are writing your paper, there's several things that you need to keep in mind, and you need to keep these in mind regardless of the type of writing that you were doing. And that is your audience, the purpose for your writing, and the occasion. Now, I'm not going to belabor occasion because it's not as important as either purpose or audience, but the occasion merely is, as you would guess, if there is a specific event for why you were writing. For example, Queen Elizabeth was Queen of England for a very long time, 50 years and more. And when she had her 50th year of reign, the poet laureate of England would have written a poem to commemorate that date. So that would have been an occasion. Your occasion is simply that I am giving you an assignment and telling you you need to write a paper. But when you execute those papers, you still need to remember the audience and you still need to remember the purpose. The audience is, of course, your readers and who is going to be reading your paper. Now, there are many different types of audiences, and those are based on age, gender, socioeconomic status, education. So anytime you are writing, you need to think of those things. For example, if you're writing a piece for a small child, you're going to use simple words and you're going to use simple sentences. If your audience is educated, you're going to use a larger vocabulary, and your sentences are going to be longer, more complex, and compound sentences. If you are writing for men, you might be writing different topics than if you were writing for women. And I don't intend to be sexist there because I'm not a sexist person. But for example, if you were writing about makeup, you wouldn't find a lot of men who would be interested in that topic. Now, you would find some, of course, but not a lot. So always keep your audience in mind. For this class, I am your audience, and your peers are also your audience because at some point they will read one of your rough drafts. But when I say that I am your audience, I am symbolic or representative of an audience at large. And so when you take this audience into consideration, you need to think that this audience is well-read and educated. So therefore, you are going to strive for that higher vocabulary that I was speaking of and longer sentences. I'm not a third grader. I don't need tiny words and I don't need very tiny sentences in order for you to get your point across and for me to be able to understand. Now, there are three purposes of writing, and those are to entertain, to educate, and to persuade. All other types of writing really fall under the auspices of those three purposes. If you're writing a journal and it's only for you to read, then you are writing perhaps to educate yourself or to entertain yourself. Now, these are not always isolated. When you are writing to persuade, you need to, by default, also be informing your audience, because if you are not informing them, how are they going to be able to make educated responses or decisions about what it is that you're trying to persuade them? And when you are writing either to inform or to educate, it's a good thing to entertain your audience. Now, when we talk about entertain, that again can cover a broad spectrum. It can be in the informative, it can be in the persuasive, and it can also be merely to entertain. Except even when we read something, a short story, a novel, there's usually a lesson or a moral in there that we are supposed to understand. And also keep in mind that to entertain is not only to make somebody feel good or to make somebody laugh, but it can be to scare somebody. Think of how many horror stories you've seen and you've been entertained. And it might also make you cry. Again, think of things that you have read and think of movies that you have seen that have made you very sad, and yet you were still entertained by those. So always keep your audience in mind and tailor your writing to fit that audience, and always know your purpose. Because if you are supposed to be writing to persuade and you don't have any persuasive elements in your paper, then you've not met the goal of that assignment. Jeepers, I guess I've run out of words to say about these things. Not really, I could go on, but I'm going to call it quits at here.